Hello there, this is Trigger with the LULU Standard Forecast. Patch 5.10 brought us exciting changes and we will see new decks pop out in the coming days. Starting things off, this list contains the available champions to play in the current standard format. Notable changes are the return of Lurk archetype, Elise and Zed as aggro options, Jarvan IV, Pantheon and Renekton for mid-range options. The surprising return of Ezreal, Lux and Kindred for control, and even more surprising Fizz comeback as an anti-control archetype. Draven and Rumble for discard archetype, and finally, the return of Ryze and Darkins. Moving on with the changes, as Ryze comes home to standard, so did the Tellstones. Tellstones coming back solidifies Ryze as a competitively viable deck archetype during the current format's lifespan. With the combination of both Tellstones and Explorers in the current standard list, the format ensures different deck archetypes are given versatility to respond against opponents' actions and removal of opponents' key units on the board. Notable changes in the patch is also the removal of landmark copying and reconstruction. During the last standard ranked format, Zilean and Taliyah decks have stood out and dominated the standard ranked ladder with a deck that no other list can compete against at the time. I have already made a video guide about this deck, so you can go check it out, link in the description. To review, the deck is a late game centric deck with a win condition of stalling the game to find combo key pieces. Survive the early stages of the game by means of either denying key spells or disrupting enemy aggression with stuns and recalls, playing Heart of the Tree and Rootbound Path and copying or reconstructing these landmarks. And finally defeating your opponents with discounted 8+ cost cards with really big stats. The deck outvalued other late-game decks and kept mid-range decks in check. With Taliyah and these tools' departure from standard, it ensures a healthy format with decks which have clear strengths and weaknesses, as well as to keep all standard decks' power levels fairly. Proceeding with notable additions, we have the return of Aloof Travelers for Bandle City. In LOR's history, Aloof Travelers and other cards with similar nature, for example, Early Bird, Trixie Tentacles and especially Watery Grave, have been notorious in the community as very unfun to play against, due to the mechanic being uninteractive and infuriating to deal with. It also combines with these decks' playstyles being very slow with unit disruption attributes, making it a slow and frustrating march towards your defeat. Expect Aloof Travelers shenanigans in the following weeks as Mordekaiser printing decks finds its way to ruin everyone's standard ranked fun. Also, with the return of Reaver's Row from Bilgewater, it presents itself as an aggressive archetype option. Basically, the deck's playstyle is to overwhelm your opponents with empowered 1-cost units to deal lethal damage and close games as early as possible. Surprising new additions for Demacia are returning cards Petricite Broadwing and Concerted Strike as options for standard deck building. As we all know, Petricite Broadwing is a 2-cost unit with Challenger and Formidable and has always been a staple for Demacian decks. Concerted Strike is also a great removal spell to deal against opponents' key units on board by selecting 2 of your ally units to strike an opponent's unit. Essential for decks such as Elites and many others. Finally, we have Faces of the Old Ones, Troll Chant, and That Stares as noticeable additions for Freljord in Standard. Faces of the Old Ones is an essential key piece in ramping decks, as it gives you an empty mana gem as long as you have an 8-cost card in your hand or on board. Troll Chant is also a very useful burst spell that gives one of your ally units plus to health while decreasing one of your opponent units. Attacking power by 2. I believe it will overshadow Sky Splitter as a defensive option for unit protection. Finally, That Stares is a Titanic unit that when played from hand gains the following skills. Either it deals 3 damage to all units aside from itself or obliterates all landmarks on board. The inclusion of That Stares is a direct response to Ryze archetypes to ensure that all decks in the format have clear strengths and weaknesses. The only card missing that was not included in the adaptation to Standard is Buried in Ice, which would have made That Stares stronger in Standard. Let us proceed with decks that you might see in the first week of the format. Starting things off, we have the notorious Vex and Nocturne Control deck, which averagely has a win rate of 60%. This deck is very famous during the last patch and will continue to be famous due to its very simple yet effective playstyle. Basically, its units and spells can deal lethal damage to the enemy nexus while keeping opponent units in check with tons of removal options. The deck also has a very good late-game finisher with the Heroine. Next up, we have Jinx and LULU Discard deck, which overwhelms opponents with threats of attacks in the early stages with Lulu's Hugify and can close out games with Jinx's Rockets, Mystic Shots, and much more. Following the trend of aggro archetypes, we have Elise's Pets, which swarms the board with spiders and can deal devastating amounts of damage against the opponent's nexus if they're not kept unchecked. Finally, we have the Lurk archetype, where sea monsters and void abominations forcefully attacks your opponents in relentless waves that will be overwhelming to block against until it is too late. With the weakened state of Heart of the Tree decks, Viktor Temple decks will have a period of resurgence as one of its greatest counters have been castrated. I have also already made a deck guide and gameplay for Viktor, so you can go check it out on my channel after watching this video. The link will also be in the description. Darkens will also be a staple of the format as it is a consistent and powerful mid-range deck that has a very strong finisher locked behind a difficult gameplay mechanic, which is the World Ender. Udyr midrange is also very consistent, now with few changes and the addition of Jarvan IV as another option for challenging bigger units. I have also made a video guide for Udyr. You can check it out on the channel or by the link in the description. With Sejuani replacing Ashe in the format, Leblanc in the Reputation archetype is still a viable mid-range option for Standard with a few changes in deck building. Moving on to Disruption, we have a Yasuo stun deck that keeps opponent units in check while preparing for a huge counter-attacks with Yasuo, Feyblade Twirler, and the Legion General. Finally, for those who have stuck until the end, I have here a Mordekaiser and Vex deck with aloof Traveler printing shenanigans. The deck works like a pseudo-Nora, generating value while depleting your opponents until you win the game by outvaluing your opponent by destroying their hand or deck. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like, subscribe, share the video, and see you in Standard Ranked Queue.